Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Osseo gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Osseo's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Osseo. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Mobile hunters, our buddies over at Tethered are always innovating to keep us more mobile and in the game when it counts. From the Tethered One Sticks, the Fast Pack, to the Ultra Lock saddle, Tethered is always designing to increase comfort and utility while reducing bulk, weight, and fiddle factor of mobile hunting gear. And now, they've outdone themselves yet again by creating the carbon fiber forged Predator CFX platform, the latest fully featured mobile saddle platform that raises the bar for what's possible in mobile hunting gear. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, and you will recognize the mug on the other end. It's my brother from another mother, Mr. Chad by God Sylvester. What's going on, dude?
Not too much, brother. Good to see your beautiful face, man. What's happening over there in
beautiful face,
Eastern Pennsylvania?
Hanging in there, man. Waiting for the season. Trying to slowly but surely get ready. Try to temper my enthusiasm a little bit. Getting ready for Idaho. Busting fingers. I dislocated a finger last night at jiu-jitsu, so that was awesome. On my draw hand too, which is even better. So I have to taper back a little bit because I am like nervous. Like every time this time of year, I always get nervous that I'm going to hurt myself. Like right before like shit gets real, and I probably get tentative, which is probably why I get hurt.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But how are things in Ohio, brother? What's going on?
Things are good, brother. Just working a crap ton right now. Trying to get, same as you, getting amped up for Idaho, trying to get things dialed in. I am way ahead of the game compared to years past, which makes me feel really good. So I'm kind of on, I don't want to say I'm on cruise control, but last couple of weeks it's felt like cruise control. And we're about 14 days out, maybe 15, 16, 17 days out from leaving. So this weekend I'll kind of ramp back up a little bit, do a little more rucking, get one hard pack in. I've been shooting broadheads for a month, so I'm good. I'm good there. Like now, it's all about making the one shot count. Like you and I talk about that a lot about our shot or practice regimen. So that's pretty much it, man. Just trying to spend some quality time with the family before things get really, really hectic. I'm trying to build those brownie points up so the wife's feeling good before I take off on that first trip.
That's it, dude. Yeah, I got my daughter's birthday, her birthday weekend coming up, so that's kind of like the last I guess like the last family thing that I have to like check the box for like the summer and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So we'll do that and it'll be fun. It'll be good. I always kind of look forward to that weekend. It's a good time. We get to see a bunch of family and stuff. But that for me then is really like turn the page, hay's in the barn, brownie points have been made. Now it's just time to kind of get after it. I just shot broadheads for the first time last week. Yeah, last weekend I shot broadheads for the first time and felt good. So it's one of those things like I used to be really neurotic about it. Like now it's like when I shoot broadheads, like if they fly, I'm like, cool, good to go. Like I put them back and I'm like, I know that they're locked in and ready. I did have to reset my sight tape. That was a little bit of a pain in the ass. Like, so I went through that process just because I hadn't checked like my sight tape really since I got the bow. Right. And I think this will be the third season that I hunt with it. String stretches, like all that kind of stuff. Right. And so fine for whitetails, right? Like I killed that deer last year, was on, this year, like in whitetail range and stuff like that. But when I started stepping back to like, we went back home to visit family, and that's when I a lot of times take like a target along and I'll shoot long distance or whatever. And I was stepping back to like, whatever it was, 60, 70 yards and letting them rip. And my left and right was good, but I was just landing like to get the arrow, to get it to land where I wanted it to land. If I was at 60, I had to really kind of set my sight at like 63 or 62. Like I was almost off like 2 to 3 yards at that distance. At 50 yards, I was off by like 2. At 40 yards, I was off by like 1. You know what I mean? So it was just like one of those things where it's like, and a part of me was like, well, you know what the change is. Like, should you just like go with it because you know what the accuracy is? And I was like, you know what, in the heat of the moment, I'm going to screw it up. You know what I mean? And like set it for 60 and take a 60-yard shot. And I'm going to be 3 inches low and stick it in the leg or something like that. You know what I mean? I was like,
right.
So I was like, nah, let me fix it, you know. And so I went and was shooting and had to set my, you know, reset my sight tape. But I felt really good. I was shooting out to like 85 yards and was putting it on a pie plate at 85 yards.
Good.
So I was like, you know, feel solid. And so last week I was shooting broadheads out to like what it was, like 53 yards or something like that. And everything left, right was good. I'm usually more concerned with my left, right than anything whenever I'm shooting broadheads at distance. Cause usually like any up down variance is probably me.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? And everything was landing good, you know, shooting broadheads and field points, like to see like, is my left, it was mainly want to see my left, right. Is it consistent with both? And it was. So
Yep.
I was like, all right, I'm good to go. You know, now it's just time to pack and get ready to ride.
That's it, man. That's one thing that I've done a lot of the last couple of years is people call it French tuning or walk back tuning. I'll just take some masking tape or duct tape and, you know, make a big X or a crosshair on the target and then just let arrows rip. And that kind of gives me a general idea. Cause like, I'm not the world's greatest archer.
Same.
Don't claim to be. Like, I'll pull a shot high, low, left, right. And when I have that crosshair and I can shoot multiple arrows and see kind of what the consensus is or the medium is between 3 or 4 shots, then I kind of know, hey, what do I need to do? And when I was going through that process a month ago, I did have to make some rest tweaks to bring in my field points to my broadheads a little bit. So
Okay,
some
interesting.
micro adjustments there. But yeah, man. Other than that,
Nice. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not the world's best archer, so it's like usually if there's something, as long as I can get everything to consistently land like in the same general area, then I'm like, all right, cool. And if I'm consistently left, then obviously something has to change, right? But like, you know, I'll shoot a group of 3, right? Because I usually only shoot groups of 3, and then I pull my arrows. And it's like if I shoot 3 and 2 of them are like in the same left and right, and then one of them all of a sudden is like 2 inches left of the group or 3 inches left of the group, I'm like, oh, that was me pulling the shot. You know what I mean? You know, so felt really good about that. The other thing I'm going to get ready to start doing is, I don't know if you do this or not, but I do. Well, so let me back up for a second. So you know my buddy Wilson, right?
Yeah.
Lives in Idaho, who I'm hunting with. Dude, that boy's fired up, son. Like, I'm getting texts from him like every day. Like, I'm not going to get out there till like I leave like the 11th or 12th. And he's already texting me like weather updates every day of like what the temp is and shit. I'm like, man, we got like a good solid like 2 weeks yet before, you know, or 2.5 weeks yet before it's go time yet. But their season opens, as you and I are recording this, like their season opens like this Saturday. So like, you know, all the guys he's around are all like fired up, you know.
Yep.
But what I do, I'm curious if you do this, but I go through and I pack and unpack my pack multiple times, like to try to get like the sequence of how things have to fit in there to get everything in the way I need it to go in. Do you do the same thing?
So I'll one up you on that. I get all my gear packed in totes. You know, obviously things that go in my pack, I go through a checklist. I have the same checklist on my phone, like in my iNotes or whatever, with check boxes. So I go through it, pack everything once, top to bottom, toothpaste all the way to extra socks, food, the whole deal, right? Go through it once, go through my list once, and then usually the weekend before we leave, I'll uncheck everything, unpack everything, repack everything, and go through my list a second time just to make sure. And it's not like I drive out there, right? So we're driving through towns. If I forget something, I can stop at a Walmart or a local sporting goods store and grab this or grab that, whatever I need. But it's like mentally that prepares me and gets me in like a certain mentality of like, hey, I got everything I need. Like now success or failure is on my shoulders, not necessarily, I can't blame it on gear, you know?
Right. Yeah, I go through, mine's mainly so I fly out. And there's a great store that he has in town there that I usually pick up a few odds and ends, like, cause some of the stuff I don't fly with just from like a weight standpoint, stuff like I won't take any of my food out. Like I'll jump in there and grab some peak refuels, like when I get to town, and just like small things like that aren't worth me like flying with.
Sure.
So I'll pick up some of that stuff, but the, so our trip this year changed a little bit, like, cause initially like how we're getting in, and I don't want to give away how we're getting into this spot, but initially there was a spot that we were going to kind of have a camp with like some wall tents and stuff like that. And that was kind of like the initial plan. And Wilson was actually in that area 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. There were already bulls in there ripping off. Like he actually heard a couple bugles in there already. And he was just there. He saw a couple elk. He was glassing an area that we were going to be hunting around. And he went in just to see like, are the elk in there, you know, already, like just suss out the situation or whatever. And what he kind of decided was like that base camp that we were going to have like in this like low lying area. You know, there was originally going to be a couple more guys that were going to be with us, like some of his buddies or whatever. And it was like, oh, we just create this base camp or whatever. But it's really just going to be, I think, me, Wilson, and I think one of our other buddies. And he's only going to be for like the first 2 or 3 days. And it's going to just be Wilson and I. And so we're actually just going to spike camp and actually move if we have to with the elk like every day. So it's like we might just be picking up camp and moving. So it's like I'm incessantly packing my pack to figure out how everything gets in and like what I absolutely don't need. I'm trying to go as light as I can, but still have all the stuff I need because I've like our plan is to like move camp if we have to as often as we have to move it. So if we have to pick it up every day, we're going to pick it up every day and just move.
Yep.
You know, so that changed a little bit. So it went from like a nice cushy like canvas tent situation with cots to like, you know, picking up my camp every day and like walking with it essentially, you know.
Yeah.
But that'll be fun, man. I'm looking forward to the adventure. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, no doubt. It sounds like an amazing area. I know that you know you guys kind of have that scoped out.
Yeah.
Have the situation figured out. It should be dynamite, man.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. But so this session that Chad and I are doing, this is our annual. You know, if you remember, it was like a month or 2 months ago or something like that. We got together and we chopped it up. And I mentioned in that session that, you know, we always do a dreams, hopes, and aspiration podcast at the beginning of every year. It just feels right. Like, I feel like I need to do this episode with you like every year to kind of like signify like the season is here. We're ready to rock and roll. And it's kind of become a tradition with us that we kind of talk through what our dreams, hopes, and aspirations are. And this year we're actually going to get to hunt together again, you know, so that's the exciting part. And so we'll go through kind of like all the hunts we're going to do, what our plans are for it, what we hope to achieve, you know, what our main goals are and stuff like that. And so since we were already talking about Idaho elk, we're both going to Idaho, right? So we'll just kind of kick that one off there. So you've been there a couple times. You've killed a bull there in the past. Last year you had, you know, a good season in terms of like encounters. Things just didn't work out the way you wanted them to, you know, and stuff. And we talked about that. So what is your goal headed back there this year? Also knowing that Idaho has changed how you get tags in Idaho now. And so the likelihood of getting back to Idaho becomes a lot slimmer, you know, than we've experienced the past several years.
Yeah, that's a big factor because the group that we're going with, we have a pretty solid group of guys. I think there's 7 of us all from Ohio that we all kind of know each other fairly well, have some history together. And this is probably the last time we're going to be able to hunt Idaho as that group as far as staying intact. Like we, you know, one person here or there might be able to get a tag in the future, but the chances of us 7 collectively together getting tags is not going to happen. And everybody is kind of aware of that. So because of that, I think this trip's going to be pretty heavily weighted on the camaraderie between elk camp because everybody knows like the situation's dissipating pretty fast and the opportunity is not going to be there in the future. So, but also knowing that, you know, last year hit a bull, couldn't find it, had an opportunity at a big bull, full draw, couldn't get a shot off, yada, yada, yada. I have really 2 goals, actually 3 goals set aside, and I'm putting myself last because the guy that I kind of day hunt with and backcountry hunt with, John, our partner here at Exodus, he hasn't killed a bull in 2 years. And in years past, like he's the one that's always putting himself kind of out and putting everyone else, you know, ahead of himself as far as an opportunity standpoint, which he did have an opportunity last year that he missed. So kind of rubbing that in on him a little bit. But
right.
My goal is to get him a bull first. And he's been picky in the past. He's at a different level than I am, but that is the number one primary goal going out there is to get his tag filled, you know, first, like right off the rip. And then following that, Cameron, one of the guys here at Exodus, has a tag this year, and this is going to be his real first experience with an elk tag in his pocket.
Nice.
And you know, I just want him to be around elk and have some encounters. You know, I don't know, like things happen when you have encounters. You don't always, you know, whether you get to draw or get the shot released, you know, that's a different story. But I just want to make sure that he has a good experience and he's around elk and he experiences the elk rut where there's elk bugling and things are happening. And it's a fast paced, exciting, adrenaline filled hunt. And then, you know, obviously third, I got to kill something this year, man.
Right.
I got an 8-year-old at home that like rubs it in every single day. It's like that dagger going in my back. Dad, you didn't kill one last year. Dad, you didn't kill one last year. You must be a terrible hunter. Like, why didn't you kill something? You know?
Oh man.
So I can't come home with an empty tag again because I will not hear the end of it from him.
Right. He's at that age where it's like, dude, what are you doing?
That's exactly what he says. Dude, what are you doing?
That's awesome, man. What do you think? So since you've been out there several different times, right? Like what's and you kind of know what to expect, right? And you've been in like the same area, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like you're in the same unit, same general area, et cetera, right? So knowing the area better now, what challenges are you expecting, that maybe you didn't expect before?
Well, I think, I'm not a big believer in the moon, like from a whitetail perspective. And we've talked about that in past podcasts, but it does affect the rut and the daylight activity, right?
Daylight,
so the weather stuff tied to whitetails, that stuff also happens in the elk woods and the elk environment. So the challenges that we're expecting is less daytime bugling because of when that full moon is going to hit. And historically, like you're going to have to hunt elk that are less active early in the morning and in later in the afternoon. But that doesn't mean that you can't kill elk. You just have to change your strategy, right? So there's going to be a lot more bedding area hunting going on where you're going to have to get close. We're probably going to run on less sleep. And this is something that I've been talking to guys, different Jason Phelps and some different people about, that those elk are going to still bugle. They're still going to rut just like white-tailed deer do when it gets hot, right? But the activity's at night. So there's going to be a lot more foot moving and locating done at night when those bulls are more vocal. And then you kind of just you're going to have to follow them and kind of figure out where they're going back to bed and hunt them suckers in their bedding areas, which is, man, it's hard. Like, you listen to these elk guys talk and, you get in there and challenge bugle at a bull 100 yards away and the thing's going to come running and defend his harem. And I have not had much success doing that. Most of my success has come in transition, or you're spotting elk and still hunting them, stalking them, or ambushing them. So there are going to be the hunt's going to play out a little bit different because of the way the full moon is landing, but we're kind of prepared for those challenges based on, what we know. And listen, like I've only done this for 4 years. I'm not an elk expert by any means, but just taking some common sense approaches and learning from podcasts and other content, learning from other people's mistakes, we kind of have a game plan geared up for that full moon.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, because like it made me think just immediately, like in talking to Wilson about what he was kind of talking about, and I don't know if he had looked at the moon, like in where the moon would be and stuff like that for that time period. But it makes sense whenever he said, like, we're going to probably be moving camp a lot, because I remember him saying, like, we're going to hunt during the day, we're going to glass. If we hear something, we're going to try to make a move on it, whatever the case is. But at some point during the day, we'll probably make a decision as to like, all right, we're not getting the responses that we're looking for. Let's go back to camp real quick. Maybe we catch like a cat nap and something to eat or whatever, and then put everything on our back and start walking and plan to try to just locate late in the evening, and then just set up there. That way we're not on top of them. Like, we don't want to camp on top of them, but we're going to camp really, really close. That way it's not a 3-mile hike to get there in the morning. It's going to be like a half-mile hike to get to where we want to start, glassing or bugling or calling to try to get on something, first thing in the morning. So that was kind of what he was talking about, which makes a lot of sense. And maybe he did look at the moon and have that same conversation with some of the local guys about, how the season might play out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I'm going to be doing a lot of walking, I think, is the moral of the story there. Is what's going to happen.
Got to find them to hunt them, brother.
That's right. That's right. So what are you most excited about for this trip?
For me, it's camp and having, I spoke on the camaraderie aspect of having 7 guys that are pretty close all together, and it's probably the last go round or last hurrah for that. So I think, I've never, although I've always enjoyed the camaraderie, like when you and I hunt together, there's always another enjoyable aspect to that. And I've never been one for accommodations, like during hunting, right? Like, so I'm never worried about food. Like, to me, it's just caloric intake, caloric output. Like, it doesn't really matter what it tastes like. It doesn't, like, we usually have a couple of drinks or whatever, but nothing crazy. Like we're not, getting trashed.
We're not staying up late. Yeah. We're in bed
there to
pretty
hunt.
early. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think taking some evenings maybe and taking some time to get together with the guys and enjoying camp a little more in this hunt is something that we'll probably do and probably honestly look back in 10 years and cherish a little bit as far as making those memories with the guys.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Because I feel like, I don't know if it's because like as we get older, like we see the more holistic view of what we're doing, as opposed to just like the myopic view of like trying to fill my tag, Because even last year, like being, in Kansas, like one of my favorite parts, like, cause, I'll get asked like, what was your favorite part of that hunt or whatever, and like everyone expects me to say like, oh, killing that deer, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, I was like, no, it was actually like meeting the guys at the truck when they showed up to help me drag it out. You know what I mean? I was like, was actually the part that I think of first, you know what I mean? Is that like, is them being there is the first thing I think of. Right. And maybe that's like, we get a little older, you get a little bit more appreciation for like, the parts that are actually really fulfilling, because that moment of the tag getting filled was really fleeting, right? Yep. Like that was like a split second, but it's like I spent time with the guys for like a couple hours, you know what I mean? Of us talking about the hunt, breaking down the deer, dragging him, like, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff, right? It was just like, but the actual tag filling part of it happened in like 10 seconds, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, I think for me, my goal is to kill a bull this year. And I'm in a little different situation than you are because one, I haven't killed a bull yet. And two, I'm kind of in John's position where the guys that I'm with, like, so it's Wilson and his buddy, and there might be like one other guy that kind of shows up that's a friend of his that might be there for like a day or two as well. But they're all like, their focus is on like getting the guy from Pennsylvania a bull. Like that's all they want to do is like, this dude's flying out here to our state to hunt with us. Like he's got to go home with a bull. And so, I feel good about I think we're going to have some opportunities, cause I think, Wilson hunted in this area last year and he had a killer time. Like we talked about it on the show that he came on and did a podcast, and he hit a hammer for that area. And he was just in bulls the entire season there, from like archery through gun season. Like he was in elk, like pretty much he passed one that he should have shot because he was looking for the one that he hit and lost. He's like, that thing stood on the road, like 50 yards broadside. Like not road, but like a 2-track in the mountain. Like came across the logging trail, just was bugling on the way up and just stopped and looked at him. He was like, he's like, I could have shot him. He's like, and everyone was like, why didn't you shoot him? Why didn't you shoot him? He's like, I want the bull that I already shot. Like, it's like, I think, he thought he killed it. So he didn't want to, take a shot at another animal. So my goal is still though, I'm just like any legal bull, I'm killing it. Like, that's just all there is to it. I don't have any delusions of grandeur. It's not like I got to kill like the world's biggest bull. I want the experience of like killing a bull. Cause I mean, my first trip to Montana, we shot a bull and I was at full draw on it. And I've told this story before, but my buddy, it turned, we were standing beside each other, and the way it turned, like it turned for him to take the shot and I was blocked. So it was like, if it turned one way, he was blocked and I had a shot. So we were behind this down tree. And if it turned the other way, I was blocked and he had a shot. So it was a 50-50 who was going to shoot the bull, and it was at like 26 yards screaming at us. Turned his way, he shot it. So I've had that experience of like breaking one down and like, and just enjoying the day. And I want that again. You know what I mean? I want that just like experience of like breaking it down, having a heavy pack, carrying it out, and being dog shit tired when you get back. Like I want all of that. And the fact that like, I don't know when I'm going to get to go back to hunt with Wilson again, just because of like, Idaho system and stuff like that changing and shit. So this might be the last time for quite a while that he and I get to hunt, elk together, So I think that's my goal. My aspiration would be to kill a fucking giant. You know what I mean? Like, for that area, cause it's northern Idaho. So it's not like, it's not the best area for big bulls. However, Wilson did get into some like big bulls for the area. I think that would be my aspiration. I think what my hope would be is that we all come back safe and healthy and have a great time. You know what I mean? Like that's just, I'm going to enjoy the spike camping. It's going to be a grind, but it's, and you know what? The other part I'm going to enjoy is like just being off grid for a while.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that can't be understated. Like work's been a grind. I'm going to have 10, 11 days to just be in the wilderness and be present. And I intend to just drop everything and be in those moments, and that's it.
This is gonna sound a little weird, and maybe I'm the oddball, but being in the backcountry, because we do a little bit of everything, right? We'll hunt from the truck, we'll hunt from base camp, we'll spike camp in the backcountry, like wherever the elk are. Like we're not kind of pigeonholing ourselves in the like, hey, got to go 12 miles deep, pitch a camp, and that's where we're gonna be. So it's kind of open ended on that front. But one of the things that I always enjoy, and I don't really realize it till I'm out there, is the lack of light pollution. Like when darkness sets in and you're in the mountains and there's no light pollution, and like you can look up into the sky and feel like you're amongst the stars. Like it's just, there's a different, I don't know how to put it in words, but there's a different feeling that hits me in the chest when I can experience that.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I know what you're saying. Like for me, it's like I get a real good sense of like how small I am.
Yes.
You know, and it's a weird feeling. Like sometimes it's a little unnerving, you know what I mean? Because like you realize like, man, I am in the middle of nowhere, dude. Like I am there is nothing around me, you know. It's a little, you know, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was like a little unnerving sometimes where you're like, dude, like I'm so far away from like, if I needed something, you know what I mean? That's just like, you're shit out of luck. You know, you better have it, or you better have a way to figure out how to get something, make something similar, or make do with something, you know, because there's no, you know, getting a text out. There's no running to the store. You know what I mean? There's none of that, you know? And so there's a part of it that can be a little bit scary, right? But there's a part of it that's also empowering, because you're like, no, I can do this. You know what I mean? It's like, I'll figure it out, whatever it is. You know what I mean? You can't possibly have everything. You know what I mean? When you go on those trips, it's like you end up getting somewhere and you're like, shit, man, I wish I had this. It's like, well, I don't. You know what I mean? So what am I going to do about it? You know what I mean? But as long as you don't get your clothes wet, you know, that's the main thing, right?
I've been there. You got to strip down your underwear and let them dry out.
That's right. Nice. So that's anything else for Idaho that you want to bring up, or is that we think we covered it pretty well?
Yeah, I think that's the general scope of it.
All right, cool. Then we're going to move on to whitetails now. So we'll do our local stuff first. So we'll start with you, Ohio. What are your just broad goals for Ohio? Well, let's back up for a second. Like, where are you at with Ohio? Let's start there.
I'm struggling, honestly. Like, this has been a tough year for me to locate deer. I'm behind on this is going to sound awful and it's going to sound weird, but I'm way behind on the camera game just because of the app migration and things that have been going on development with the app. It's embarrassing to say, but I only have a handful of cameras out to even find deer. Now, in the evening time, since we've moved into that more rural area, there's a lot of glassing opportunity, right? So I'm still glassing with the kids a handful of nights every week, kind of that last hour before we got to put them to bed. And, dude, I have not turned a single big deer. I say big deer. I'm going to say I haven't turned a pope and young deer up all summer long. Wow. Until 2 weeks ago, I was at a random farmer's house picking up hay for my wife. And he was talking about his neighbor. And it's like, oh, I know your neighbor. He runs some of our cameras. Yeah, just making small talk with the guy.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I got to show you this picture. He shows me the picture, and it's like mega giant. So I start poking around a little bit. And he's like, oh, I had him last year. Yeah, here. And he's like, I saw him this year in the backfield, and he has more points than he had last year. And so at that point, I'm not asking too many questions because the guy's just being overly generous, you know?
Right.
And then we start scrolling through pictures, and he must have not caught on that I said, hey, your neighbor bought cameras from us. And he didn't put two and two together, you know?
Right.
And then he eventually realized who I was and what, we owned Exodus and whatnot. Then he clammed up real tight.
Right.
Knowingly that his property backs up to public, like public touches his ground.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the stuff that he was getting, all the stuff that he was sharing with me of the bigger deer was all at night. So I don't know anything about deer other than he was showing me pictures. It is a mega giant. I need to get over there and put some cameras out, obviously, but other than, catching things through the grapevine or hearsay or whatnot, and who knows, that picture could be from a neighbor 10 miles away and the guy's just full of crap too.
Right. Yeah.
People do that, right? But that's the only lead I have coming into Ohio I think that there's a big deer bouncing around, this one area of public, and I need to get some cameras out to try to figure them out.
Dude,
But
that's
also,
a pretty good lead though. Like, I mean, versus where you were at like 2 weeks ago when you and I talked.
oh yeah, yeah. And shoot, I had a thought. Wasn't sure what I was going to say there. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Fleet me.
But that's exciting, dude. Like, because 2 weeks ago you and I were chatting. You're like, dude, I got nothing. You're like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm gonna go kill some does. That's about it. And like, that's where you were kind of at.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the chances are? Like, well, to your point, I mean, I know you have like just grapevine intel, right? And who knows? To your point, that deer could be 10 miles away, like you said, and like a guy could just be talking shit. But what's your plan for figuring out if this guy's real or not? Like, I just can't thumb down. I don't know where that came from. So are you familiar with this piece of public? Like,
Oh yeah.
You are? Okay. Like,
yeah.
You've spent a fair amount of time on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was I talked to the neighbor. I'm like, the neighbor that bought cameras off of us, we both have kids in the same school district. So I immediately shot him a text and said, hey, I bought some hay off your neighbor. Like, is he a straight shooter? And he's like, well, what do you mean a straight shooter? I was like, well, he was sharing, some deer information. Yeah. And I just wondered, like, if I could take it to heart or if the guy's full of crap. And he was like, well, I'm sure he knows about the deer too. So like, he probably didn't,
Right.
He knows who I am. He didn't want to be too revealing. And he was like, well, sometimes he's a little quirky, but he's a decent guy.
Right.
So took that for what it was. And then I immediately got on X and, started plotting. Like, if he's getting pictures of this deer, and obviously I looked at timestamps of the pictures, middle of the night. I'm like, where's a mile radius of where I think this deer could be? And right dab smack in the middle is an 80-acre clear cut that was cut 4 years ago. So thick, nasty. That's my first, and that is bordered by the public on two sides. So on the, it's kind of like a triangle shape. So it would be like the northwest side and then the northeast side.
Mm-hmm.
That clear cut is bordering the public. So that's my first instinct, like go in there, speed scout the edges, try to pick up historical sign.
Just somewhere where there's where there had been scrapes laid down in the past, or if there's like a bunch of rubs in an area, like that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, no doubt. And then two was knowing that I'm going to be in Idaho and like I'm probably not going to get to scout for whitetails until more towards the end of September, because like, let's face it, September's upon us as we speak. I won't be able to do much until I get back. So I instantly thought, like, this is probably going to be late October rut type stuff if I can turn the deer up, right? So my next thought is start looking for food sources, standing cornfields. What fields are in the area are planted in corn. Beans are going to come off early. They're going to be brown unless non-factor unless there's a double crop field somewhere close. So it immediately went to like, okay, if I can turn them up, I probably need to focus on fall food and locate the does. Like, let me go in there and just find deer and find those doe bedding areas. And for the most part, access is going to be a little bit rough. I'll figure that out after I, figure out the deer, I guess, or at least locate the deer. But that's kind of where my mind is for Ohio right now. Nice.
That's awesome, dude. What I love about right there was like, people that are listening, like, sometimes like they see a deer, or they get a picture of a deer and they start making plans for where they see him versus where he's going to be. Right. And there's a difference in those. Sometimes you get a homebody who does the same thing, no matter what the season is, right? With small variances, maybe he moves a little less, maybe he moves a little more, or whatever the case is. And then you get some deer that transition completely out of an area. You know what I mean? That just like when the shift happens, right, could be like completely gone, right? And then you have like the component of it of when am I actually going to be hunting him and what's going to be valid at that point, right? And I love how like your mind immediately went there. It's like, okay, this is going to be a non-factor because I'm not going to be around. I'm going to get back late. I'm going to have to catch up on work, all that stuff that I'm going to have to do. So the beginning of October is probably not in play unless I really know where he's bedded, which probably won't because I don't know a whole lot about him right now.
Right.
So the play is going to be more so, when his biology starts driving his desire to move, check scrapes, get up and make some, make some rounds. Can I get a visual on him? Can I find him? Where are the primary and secondary food sources during that time of year? Where are the does going to be that he's going to want to breed, or at least start scent checking, like doe bedding areas and stuff like that. It's like immediately go into like what's relevant when I'm actually going to be able to hunt him.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I'm sure you see this too, but it's like, I think people get hung up on like making a plan based on how they want to hunt the deer versus how the deer needs to be hunted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that probably does happen to a lot of folks, and it certainly happened to me in the past too. And I think that's just part of the progression that we go through as whitetail hunters. I think that sometimes we're overly confident in our ability and decision-making power, and sometimes we give the deer too much credit, sometimes, not enough, but you also have to have the realization of, the timing factor. Like, you can't hunt a deer where he's not going to be. So just knowing what my limitations are and time constraints around the home state of Ohio, like that's just how it's going to have to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't plan for like the best case. You can't plan for like your optimum, scenario if your scenario is never going to be optimum.
Yeah.
Or optimal. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like people plan like, it's like if you're a guy who only can get out like but so many days, it's like, man, you got to make your plan based around that. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this, which is why I say it's like, there's been deer in the past that I've hunted where it's like I didn't hunt him aggressively because it's like I didn't want to booger something up. But in hindsight, looking back on it, I'm like, man, I could really only hunt that deer 5 days in total anyway, based on my schedule and stuff like that. It's like I should have just went for broke because the worst thing was going to happen is I bumped him and I didn't kill him. It's like, but at the end of the day, what I did was I was so careful that I didn't kill him anyway and never saw him. You know what I mean? And he was in the area, and we were ships passing in the night the whole time. You know what I mean? I think a lot of folks do that. But what do you put your chances at actually getting on this deer?
Oh, extremely low. Yeah, extremely low. Well, listen, it's like
I love it.
You catch, I'm catching my intel through the grapevine. I haven't acted on it other than digital scouting, right? So I haven't done anything on foot. Don't have cameras out yet. To your point, when I get back from Idaho, I know there's going to be some catch up going to be happening. The only thing that is playing in my favor is I'm familiar with the area, right? Like I've hunted it in the past. I know how the access works. I know the pressure fluctuations with other hunters. So I have that stuff in my back pocket, but without locating the deer, like, everybody knows of a big deer. Well, knowing of a big deer and getting on a big deer are two completely different things.
Yeah.
So I would say it's...
Well, because, dude, I mean, we knew of big deer in an area that we hunted before. I mean, you were on that deer, like, several years ago. But there was another big deer 2 ridges over that we knew of that I was trying to hunt. Knew of him, but, like, I mean... I think he was in that general area the one day that I hunted. I think I remember you and I talked about this where I bumped a big deer. Like I heard grunting and I bumped him on my way out, like sitting along that edge of that ridge, the drop over the side, like where Caesar was at, actually right in that general area where you guys shot Caesar that one year.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know if that was him or not, right? I just remember a big like deer jumped up and like took off and I just got a glance of him. But that's the difference, right? Is like knowing there was one in there, right? And being on him were two different things. Like the fact that like that occurred was more happenstance than it was anything. You know what I mean? Right. I was hunting a scrape area. That was all the more I knew about him. Which there's a big difference between that. So given your limited opportunity or limited chance that you're giving yourself, what is your goal, your aspirations, and your kind of dreams for Ohio this year?
Goals honestly would just be fill some doe tags on my, like, right outside my back door. So like on the property, that the 5 acres that I own. I think I have not killed a deer there yet. Did some TSI and listen, it's 5 acres. There's like 2 stand locations and it's just the travel corridor. I don't hold any bedding, but I'm between the bedding and the food. So it's gonna happen. And we have some cameras back there. We get deer on it, whatever. But the goal would be to fill my doe tags and just get some meat in the freezer. Aspirations, man, I think my kids are starting to get to the age let me, I guess, back up. Last year, being the kids are 10 and 8, like they're still not in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, but they're starting to have some interest in it. And a couple times we sat together in a ladder stand, make fun of me, whatever the case is.
Right.
But just having them to be exposed to seeing deer, like in their natural environment, like not out of the truck, out of binoculars, and being up close and seeing how they move and things. I think that's going to be a pretty special moment.
Yeah.
And just to be able to kill a doe with one of the kids in the stand with me, I think is like, I'll probably lose my shit.
Yeah.
You know
Dude,
what I mean?
look here, dude, you're going to lose your shit. Like, all right. Like I know my guy here. Like you're going to totally lose it. You know, as excited as you get about deer getting killed from like 1,000 miles away, dude, like I'm going to say like you do it in the stand with one of your kids, you're going to freak. All right. So that's your aspiration. Like what's your dream season look like in Ohio?
Well, dream season would be to get on that big deer and kill him. Like
Right,
that
there
would
you
be,
go.
you know, that would be the dream without a doubt. It's been a long. It's been a long time since I killed a buck in Ohio.
Right.
You know, there was a handful of years we were hunting together on that public where I was passing deer that I probably shouldn't have been passing. But again, hunting deer that I could probably only have the opportunity in my lifetime to hunt maybe once or twice. You know, that type of caliber of deer. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that would be the dream.
Sweet. I think for me locally, or in Pennsylvania, I think I think my goal this year is to just continue enjoying hunting PA and some of the places that I've kind of scouted and stuff like that. Like I love water access stuff. Like I love like those mornings going into the dark. I love kayaking out at night. I like kayaking out with a deer in the boat. You know what I mean? Like that's just fun. Like whether it's a doe or a buck or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. As far as like the kayaking part, you know, it's like, that's always fun to throw in the kayak and bring out. And so my goal, I think really early, it's like, cause I'm going to get back from Idaho and my season's already going to be open. Cause I think we opened like the 19th or something like that. Like don't quote me on the date, but we have that middle of September kind of opening in the special regs unit. And so I think my plan is to really try to, like in the early part of the season, to take the longbow out and shed blood with the longbow and put a doe or two in the freezer is what my plan is. That will ultimately determine how often the longbow goes with me whenever it's time to get down to business type of thing. You know what I mean? Cause I'm really hesitant to take that and trust myself with it, you know, on like, and I don't want to diminish like hunting a doe. Like, people are going to maybe poo poo that, but like, I'm just going to call it what it is. Just going to be honest, right? It's like, I'm more serious whenever I'm trying to kill a buck than I am whenever I'm trying to kill does, right? Just because does are a target rich opportunity. Like I'm going to get opportunities at those. Bucks, there's certain types of bucks that I want to kill, and they don't always come by my stand in a season, or if they do, it doesn't always necessarily work out. And I don't want to blow an opportunity if I'm not confident with the longbow, you know? And so, but if I can get a couple does on the ground with it, there's a stronger likelihood that it's going to go with me to the tree, you know, sure, and hunt with that in perpetuity. So that's kind of the goal there. As far as like, you know, the other goal would be to fill my buck tag this year. You know, I got cameras out late this year, but I will say that like the intel that I've gotten from cameras has been good. Like whether it's been local or elsewhere. There's a couple places locally that are like fire that are just like, in one spot, I don't even know if I'll get to. I actually told Litzinger he should come hunt it with his mouth tab since he's mouth tabbing it these days. Because there's a huge 6 in this spot, and he loves big 6s. And so I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm even going to hunt it this year. I was like, you should just come hunt it. You know what I mean? I was like, because there's a giant 6 in there, and he was pretty consistent, and he was in daylight and stuff like that. But that spot's like fire in like all of October, basically through the rut. But like that spot was getting daylight pictures basically from like the 1st of October all the way through like the middle of November. And it's just right. And so, you know, that area would be like an area of interest. There's some good bucks in there. Got a couple other decent bucks on cameras that I pulled, I guess 2 weeks ago. And then there's one other area that I'm really kind of interested in. I'm probably going to hunt some does in there. It was a new spot to me last year. I had like 2 decent bucks in that area, but then I got lazy and I didn't change the batteries. So I was like, oh, I'll be back here later. And I never got back there. So like the camera literally died like October 31st. And so, yeah, it was terrible. but there were a couple good deer in there early, and there was a couple good deer in there late, and there's tons of does in there. So I think that's probably more where I'm hunt some does and maybe a decent buck runs by. But the moral of the story is like there's a handful of decent bucks that I know of in a couple different areas that I would be happy to shoot, and so this year I feel good just about like the target opportunities, just a matter of like matching things up, whenever I get back and being able to spend time out, in the timber in the right place at the right time. It won't be for lack of having targets this year, because there's a handful of them. The trick is always trying to find the time to get out and, the weather cooperating and all the normal stuff we kind of go through. I think what my chances are of success this year, I'm going to say 50-50. I think it could be only because like there's a handful of places that I think that are ripe for the picking, I think it also comes down to like how choosy I am as well. You know what I mean? The choosier I get, the lower that number goes, right? But if it's like a good buck and I'm like, yep, I'm going to kill a good buck this year. And, I think there's a handful of those that I have around that would be, that would be fulfilling to hunt. And then as far as like my dreams would be like, I would love to kill a deer super early in the year this year. I mean, killed one pretty early last year. It was like October 15th, but I would love to do like the opener kill, like, cause I've never done that. I've never killed one on opening day, so I would love to be able to go out Saturday morning, first thing, like 7:30, boom, done. You know what I mean? Like, and then you have the rest of the season to kind of like just enjoy it and look forward to the other hunts that I have going on and fill doe tags and have kind of the pressure off, if you will, So I think that would be like my dream, was just to be to do that and then just be able to enjoy the rest of the season. And then, of course, getting ready to go hunt with you and stuff. So I think that would be the dream kind of scenario.
I'll tell you what, man, your track record the last couple of years has been dynamite. So like, I'm not putting, it wouldn't surprise me at all if you go out opening day and man, you're in them and on them and,
right.
and get that goal or dream, I guess, fulfilled.
Yeah. The one thing that always kind of lurks in the back of my mind is I'm like, I think I said it last year, was like, I hunted 5 days last year and filled 2 tags, right? And killed 2 bucks in 2 different states, right? And I'm like, so I'm strapping in for one that this year that doesn't quite go like that. You know what I mean? Where I'm putting like the helmet on, you know what I mean? Like going to get ready to get beat up and go for a roller coaster ride. You know what I mean? It's kind of like where my mind's at. Cause you know what it's like, man. It's like you have a good run and it's like, that horseshoe at some point falls out of your pocket. You know what I mean? It's like, and then it's back to reality, and so I'm just holding out that like, I can have like the horseshoe for like elk season, and get that done and like, in a good buck, one more good buck this year. And then, then someone else can have the horseshoe for a little while. Then I'll give it up, you know what I mean? But so then at that point, hopefully everything goes well, dreams come true. And then you and I will be off. We're getting the band back together, dude. We're headed back to Missouri, man. I'm so stoked I think I sent you a picture of the trailer. Like I was in the trailer. I just sat in it on like Saturday. I got in it to get something. And I just sat in there for like a half hour, like on my phone doing something because I just wanted to be in the trailer.
That's freaking awesome, dude. I am so jacked and so excited. Like the anticipation for that hunt is ultra high. Like yeah. I'm sure you're in the same boat. Like just knowing that we have a little bit of
intel
experience under our belt in that area. And like, listen, we got our butts kicked that trip for like the first 7 days or whatever. I can't remember how long we were out there, but the matter of the fact was when we found the spot or the area, like we were there for, I don't even know if we were there for 48 hours. And like,
we weren't, we got there on whatever day that was. Cause so you and I were you and I had to head to Ohio cause you were on that big deer in Ohio. Mm-hmm. That was the year, that was the next to last year that you hunted him, because I think you hunted him the following year for like a little bit. I think that was the next to last year you hunted him. And I had knowledge of that big deer that was on the other ridge, like to the, what was it, to the west? I don't remember like how that ridge runs. I think it was to the west, down where Caesar was killed. Is that
south?
Yeah,
south.
It was south. Yeah. And so I had a deer that I knew of down there that I wanted to get to hunt. So we were kind of like, we're leaving on Sunday or whatever day it was that we were going to head to Ohio. And we got there on like Friday, I think it was. And midday, and we started hunting at 2, and we saw a couple big deer and jumped a couple big deer, and then got up the next morning hunting on Saturday first thing in the morning, and I shot one like first thing in the morning and lost it, didn't find it, and then we literally left the next day, or left that night or the next morning or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we didn't have but 24, maybe 36 hours in country.
Something like that. I know it wasn't much. I had that first afternoon, I bumped that big deer, and instantly I was like, all right, we're in them, we're around them, like this is it, And I missed the deer the next evening, shot underneath his belly, and then you hit one that day, and then I think that, because I remember we were up all night Saturday night, I think, walking through that CRP and trying to track that deer that you hit. And I think that I left Sunday, and I think that did you stick around and look? I think you looked that morning again. I can't remember how it played out, but
I think we might have. I'm trying to remember, man. It's terrible that I can't remember that, but I think we might have took like one more cursory walk, like Zach and I did, maybe. But we didn't stay very. We didn't stay very long,
right?
Because Zach had to book too. Like our friend Zach was out filming that trip, and he had to get back to his wife and stuff. He had shit going on at home because he runs a business like outside of like being at that time he was a film guy, and did some other, I forget what the other stuff was that he was doing, but he had to get back to like his other entrepreneurial job that he had some obligations to fulfill. So yeah, we weren't there. The moral of the story was we weren't there very long.
No.
Yeah.
No. So I think that trip's going to be amazing. Now, the likelihood of going back into those spots and being right in them, like right off the rip, is probably not very good. But I think with a little more time, I think that we'll have some success. Like we had that amount of success in, basically a hunt and a half or 24 hours, whatever we were actually hunting. I think that we'll do pretty good. I think that we'll be able to scout our way in, get a handle on the situation, and get in deer, within a couple of days.
Yeah. That, and I got some buddies that live in that general area too, that I kind of confirmed, and I talked to you about this, but I confirmed like the quality of the area, so to speak, not just in terms of caliber and age, but also in terms of like target rich, you know what I mean? Like there being, plenty of deer there, so it wasn't a fluke essentially. Right. It was one of those things where a buddy of mine, I kind of mentioned it to him, and he was kind of like, hey, how you know about that spot? Like, he's like, hey, it's my honey hole, man. What are you doing? It's like, he's like, how do you out of staters find that? So what would your goal be for that spot then?
It is to fill a buck, fill the buck tag would be the goal. I think that's pretty high likelihood of happening.
Yeah. What are you thinking for, like, what's your criteria, shall we say?
Well, I don't think it changes a whole lot. Like those out of state trips, like you have a pretty short window. So I think it's, a Pope and Young type deers, to put a inch metric on it, it would be like a 130 or better, probably. Just knowing, like being there, seeing the caliber of deer, knowing that you've done some intel on the back end, talking to some locals, like we've kind of verified the caliber of deer and the quality of deer that are in the area. So I think going there and having the expectations of being on 130s, I don't think that's far-fetched, at all. Now, who knows? Like we're in August, their EHD starts to, mess around a little bit. It's in Southeast Iowa, it's in Wisconsin, whatever the case is. So there are some variables there, but I don't think that's out of the question to be, in and on 130 caliber type deer.
Yeah. What do you think your approach will be this year, knowing that we have a little bit of intel? Like, we're not, like you said, we're not starting from ground zero. We don't have a ton of intel, but I feel like for the small amount of time that we were there, we saw a lot, like, gained really good experience,
Yeah. Well, just knowing that, like, it is a rut-based trip, right? So it's probably be the first day of kind of getting a grasp on some of the access, because I think that we both have our eyes on spots that we haven't necessarily laid eyes on in the general area. Because again, going back to that 36-hour window, like we were kind of in spots where we were around deer, so we didn't venture out and really explore and see what the grand 30,000 foot view had to offer. So I think it's probably a heck of a lot of scouting the first couple of days and maybe walking and bouncing around until you bump deer and see some of the things that you want to see. And then it's kind of, okay, I've kind of narrowed down the focus into this spot from, the 30,000 foot view. Let me really poke around and kind of dial it in on that one spot. But knowing it's a rut-based hunt, it's, it's about does. It's about finding those doe groups, finding fall food, and dialing it in from there.
Yeah. What makes, from your perspective, like this trip or like this spot, like what makes it unique to you? Like what's unique about it that's maybe different than what you usually get into?
Do we want to talk about that?
Not the super unique part, but like, I mean, I know what makes it, I know what makes it unique for me is that it's got a mix of everything. Like there, like there's hardwoods there, there's CRP there, there's swamp there, there's ag there, and so it's like one of the few places I've been where it's like all those things kind of come together in one spot. And so like the types of setups, like I can already think of places that Zach and I were last year that I would potentially, or not last year, but the year that we were there, that I would potentially go back to and hunt differently. Like there's one area of CRP, like, so the first day that we were there, when I almost got run over by that 150-inch deer when it came running out of that thicket and almost ran over me while I was taking a leak. We stalked that deer and got back to within 40 yards, and like where he kind of went, it's like it's a bunch of CRP, and I would probably hunt that off the ground. You know what I mean? Because like I can see a long ways, I can actually see into like the neighbor property, and I think I could probably actually decoy a deer if I could glass one. I could probably decoy one out. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where it's like you can ground hunt, you can probably decoy. The buck I shot and lost, I rattled in. You know what I mean? So it's like I almost feel like that area, it's like everything is kind of at your disposal. Like however you want to do it, whatever it calls for, like you can hunt it that way. You know what I mean? It's not like being in PA where it's like, yeah, I can hunt from the ground, but I'm not gonna be able to see shit. Right. And so it's like, I'm better off being in a tree and maybe less, I don't want to say less mobile, but just like less mobile. I can't just move when I see the deer and try to cut him off or get in front of him or whatever. Right. And so this is one of those areas where depending on where you're at and where you're set up and where you're seeing the deer, like, man, you could really hunt a bunch of different styles.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and valid, all, top to bottom for sure. I guess the uniqueness from my perspective, and we'll leave it pretty general, would be access.
Yeah.
You really have to think about how you're accessing, because the opportunities there for access are somewhat limited.
Yeah.
And knowing like you may not just want to burn through stuff. Like I talked about speed scouting, but you need to look at the map and try to figure out and have an idea of a planned approach rather than just burning through something.
Barreling through. It's not like being in a big woods piece where it's like you can just barrel in, and it's like access is still important, right? I don't want to get anyone to get me wrong, but there's a lot more. You can screw some stuff up and still be okay, right? In a big woods piece, right? Because like the deer probably isn't leaving the county or whatever, right? But this is a situation where it's like you could bump a deer and you won't ever see that deer again, right? Yeah, or you could get into an area and the deer know that you're there because it's just like you're in it. Like when you get in, you're in it. You know what I mean? It's
And I guess from my perspective, it's the reason for concern there is, is the amount of private that the public kind of touches without giving too much information away. Like you can hunt deer on public, and you can bump them, do whatever, whether it's a doe or a buck. If a buck's trailing a doe and you push the doe, and like all of a sudden he's on private, you really can't. You're not gonna be able to do anything with them. So there are some downsides to the area, and that would be one. Like a lot of this stuff is hugging private, and if you aren't careful in your approach and what you're doing, you could blow it for the day. Or like, let's face it, like if they're in lockdown and you bump that doe and like it's over on private, like it's going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
So that would be, that's part of the uniqueness though.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So what is like your dream scenario for that place?
Oh man. Kill Booner, baby.
Kill Booner. Yeah. I mean,
Kill
dude,
Booner.
That place is possible. You know what I mean? Like based on some of the intel that we've gotten, from some friends, high friends in low places or low friends in high places. um, that's definitely a possibility. Like they're there. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I think my goal is the same as yours, man. When I do these out of state trips, it's, 130 is kind of like the marker, if I can make that happen, is kind of ideal. Or if something really cool happens and I want to shoot the buck, you know what I mean? Like that's also like a possibility. Like comes in, fighting another deer, makes a scrape, snort wheezes, rips up a tree. It's like, yeah, I'm shooting you. You know what I mean? Like this is all there is to it. Right. That's more of like a game time decision. But as I sit here academically, it's probably that mark, I think my aspiration for it is to have the full experience while I'm there, because that place, the way it hunts, and we're not going to give a whole lot away, but like the way it hunts is just like, gives you a really cool hunting experience, and that's what I want. It's like, I want to kill a good buck, and I want to like have the full experience and bringing him out and, and doing all the stuff, and, yeah, I think that's what my aspiration is. I think my dream scenario is both of us killing deer, good bucks, and like having them in the back of the truck, and it's cold and we have good weather, right? And we get back to camp and we're just hanging out at the trailer, having a beer, sitting outside under the stars, just kind of chilling, and really, just enjoying, the fact that we're getting to spend some time together again, in the whitetail woods, doing the thing that we like to do, together. And to your earlier point, the elk woods piece is that camaraderie of like me and you getting the band back together. And in that, this actually should probably be like the first year of like many to come now, that because we're kind of back synced up again, that where we should be like on hunts together for the next couple years, because we took a little bit of a hiatus because we both had different stuff kind of going on. And so it's, spending that time with you, getting a week there, just hanging out with my road dog, and doing the thing that we love to do, talking deer when we get home, going to bed early, and just getting after it, man. That's what I look forward to.
Hell yes, brother. Hell
That's
yes.
Right. I know. I'm ready to go sleep in a trailer tonight, actually. We will have some, additions. Like since you've been in the trailer last, we have a shitter. So that's new, right?
Perk.
Yeah, it's a perk. And we also now have Starlink Mini. So we will be connected to the world now, which is pretty sweet. So, it opens up some hunt opportunities whenever you work from home, if you can work from your hunting unit, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, that's all nice and well and good to have, but like, it's it's just a shitty little trailer, man. It's tight quarters, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, dude, I love whenever you and I take a trip in it,
It's awesome, man. And so over the last handful of years, like we've eaten tags together, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've killed a buck on your own. I've killed a buck on my own. But like, if there's a trip to make it happen where we both fill tags, like this is the trip to make it happen, dude.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is too, man, it's like we have a high standard in that trailer.
Oh, geez. Yeah. The average out of state
is
what
like
is it?
170. What, I don't know. What was the one you killed? I don't remember what it scored.
It was low 170s, 172,
172, 173,
4, somewhere in there. Yeah.
And mine was 172 and some change, right? And so the average buck out of that trailer is like 172 and a half. You know what I mean? So there's a standard. It's turning into like the Booner wagon. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's like, if we do anything, dude, we go all in or we don't do it at all. You know what I mean?
I never thought about it from that perspective or whatever, but that's funny.
Yeah, dude, it's the magic bus, dude. I don't know what to say. Like the one thing I did want to do, I thought about doing, was getting pictures of like the deer that we kill out of the trailer and like pasting them like on the ceiling. So like every buck that gets killed, like using that trailer is lives in the trailer.
That'd be sweet.
Or I thought about this was too expensive though, but it's why I didn't do it. But I thought about getting those mini Euro mounts made of each deer that's killed. I don't know if you saw the dude that makes those, like the super miniature ones are like tiny, like almost like the size of like the little football helmets you used to get in like the bubblegum machines, like when we were kids.
Yeah.
It's almost like the size of that, but he does like a 3D print of like, you scan the deer, like there's an app that you do it and you scan the skull or the deer, and it takes all the measurements when you scan it, like with AI or whatever, and then he's able to 3D print basically an identical replica of that buck as a Euro mount in like a very small, like 1/8 scale or whatever, Euro mount. And I thought about getting those and hanging those up, because we could hang those, be plenty of room, then where we could, have all the different deer that we killed, maybe make a little thing below it that says like, whose deer it was, where it was killed, the score, like whatever. I thought that'd be kind of cool to track that.
It would be freaking awesome.
Yeah. That way there's like a little memorial there of like everything that went down in the rut wagon.
Well, dude, now you have me rethinking the goal for this trip. Like, I don't want to be the guy that brings the average down. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like, man, we did have a 172.5 average until Chad killed that 130, and then like, I didn't bring the average down. I just didn't kill anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Nice. Well, cool, man. It's the season's here. I'm looking forward to it. I think, all things aside, the fill-in tags and whatever, man, I'm just stoked that you and I are going to get to go hunt together again. Like, that's probably what I'm most looking forward to this year, is getting to spend time with you in the woods. You're one of my favorite people to spend time in the woods with, not just like as a friend, like talking and stuff like that, but like spending time in the outdoors. Like, you're one of the few guys I do that with, like you and Greg Litzinger and a couple other buddies that I actually spend time in the woods with. And I value that time, with you guys doing that stuff, and we don't get to do it as often as we would like. And so super looking forward to that. And that's like my big goal, is that we just have a great time, and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. That's it's hard to come by. Like, there's a lot. I mean, obviously, like, we both have broad general circles of guys who are crazy about deer hunting, but like, the reality of it is, like, you could be friends with a guy and talk deer hunting, but it's a different situation when you're plugged in together.
Yeah.
In a 10-foot, 10x6 travel trailer, like, smelling each other's feet every night. You know what I mean?
There's only a handful of people I could do that with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, because I've bit my tongue a couple times. I'm like, oh man, maybe I should hunt that. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't think I can do that. Maybe that's a bad idea. Yeah. And the other thing is too, is just like, the guys that you chop it up with, because truthfully, I mean, you and I almost did like an entire podcast before we jumped on here to do the podcast, where we were like literally looking at maps together, talking about stuff. You know what I mean? And like, there's very few people that I'm able to do that type of stuff with, you know what I mean? That like, like you said, like, we know a lot of guys, a lot of good hunters and stuff like that. Right. But there's a handful of dudes that, that you just jive with, where it's like, we think similarly, right? Like, tactically, we think similarly. So like, when I have a plan, I can bounce it off you, because we approach things a lot the same way. Right. And so I know whenever you look at the plan, you might have a different idea slightly than me, and I want to hear that. But it's not a complete departure from what I'm already kind of considering, because we have very similar approaches. Yep. You know what I mean? And so it's just that type of stuff. And that's what I love about we get home. The other thing that I love about when we get back to the trailer when we're hunting is that we usually have like a debrief, you know what I mean? But we don't get into it super deep. It's not like we tear it apart. It's like, hey, what'd you see? Oh, I saw this. What'd you see? What are you going to do tomorrow? I'm thinking of doing this. And like, we'll talk about it for 5 minutes. What are you going to do? Like, oh, I'm probably going to do this. Like, okay, are you going to access it this way? Yeah, I'm probably going to use that access. Like, all right, cool. And that's about the end of it. You know what I mean? It's not like, because it was funny whenever I was talking to Jake, when I was on the podcast with you guys after I got back from Kansas, we were talking about that a little bit. And because he was like, whenever I found that deer or whatever. And I said, I really only text like Chad, like when I found him. I was like, I sent him like a really short text where I was just like, I'm on a good one, blah, 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 blah. I was like, and he basically sent back like, that's awesome. Like, there was no like further dialogue about like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? I was like, it was like, if he wants my advice, he'll ask, you know what I mean? And if he doesn't, that means he knows what he's got to go do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, our tactical dialogue is not like not like super long. It's usually like very like pointed and like, I think he's doing this. I think they're doing this. This is what I think we should do. All right, cool. Let's eat. Let's go to bed. And that's it.
Yeah. I think the other important thing there is too, like, to kind of not be the polar opposite of the point that you made, but neither one of us are yes men.
Yeah.
Either way, like, if we see something, like, we're not afraid to bring it up and like, hey, think about this, or think about, did you consider this or consider that? Like, I think a lot of times guys get in camp together and they're afraid to speak their opinion if it's different than the perspective of somebody else. And like, that's not always a good thing. Like, sometimes, yeah, like maybe the guy's full of shit and he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
But sometimes like there's a caveat there that could be the difference maker. And I think that's really important to be around guys who are okay speaking their mind, whether you agree with them or disagree with them to a point, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something special that you and I have. Like, you can look at something that I'm doing and you can say, well, yes, I think you're on the right track, but did you think about X, Y, and Z? And maybe I'm like, dude, I didn't even think about that. Like, you're right. Like, that is what the deer's doing.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty critical.
Yeah, it is. And it's rare, right? Because how many people, I mean, you see this shit on social media, dude. Like, everyone wants to be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I heard a great quote. It was like, I don't remember if it was, I don't want to be right. It was like, I don't need to be right. I just want to get it right. Like, and that, I think, is why you and I work so well together. Like, when we're hunting together, because like, we don't care like if we're right or not. Like, we just want whatever the thing is. Like, if we're talking about a hunt that you're doing, or we're talking about a hunt that I'm doing, like, my goal is, if I'm trying to help you, is just like, I don't care if I'm right or not. I just want to get it right. Right. Whether that means something I said makes you think about something differently, and it has nothing to do with what I said, but it's the thing that prompted you to go like, nope, I think it's this, and that's the right thing. Right. We got it right. And then vice versa. It's like, you're not necessarily desiring to be right. If you're trying to help me figure something out, you just want to make sure we get it right. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest difference. It's like, so many people want to flex their muscles. Like, I know everything. I'm the best deer hunter on the planet. See, I was right about this. Right. Where it's like, man, when you're hunting with your buddies, it should be about getting it right, so they have success, not being right.
Yeah, I freaking love that.
Yeah. So it's a great place to end it, man. But before we do that, Exodus Outdoor Gear, you guys got a bunch of stuff going on at Migration. If you haven't done it yet, you need to do it, right? All that information's on the website, on YouTube, all that stuff, to where it's like, if people are making the migration for their cell cameras and stuff like that, you guys have all that information out there now.
Yep, you got it, man. All things Exodus Outdoor Gear.
Yep. And if you're still needing to get arrows, you need to hit the arrow builder and make that happen as well.
Well, yes, but we are, man, I cannot believe how many people buy arrows, like, at this point in the season. Like, and I get some people are reordering. We are so flooded with we are so flooded with arrow orders right now. We actually marked things out of stock this week because we can't meet the 5-day build times like listed on the builder. Like, it is bonker. It's like historical data for deer for people who buy arrows in at the end of August and the beginning of September. It's bananas right now.
Right. Nice. Well, that's a good problem to have. So maybe if you need arrows, like, give them a day and then and then hit them up. Brother, I'm looking forward to our season, man. I wish you the best of luck in Idaho. I look forward to seeing you when we head to Missouri. And yeah, man, let's make this one for the books.
Yeah, baby. Let's make 2024 count.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Osseo Gear, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.